The reason why I'm making this video is because I don't want people with schizophrenia to live in isolation and feel that they are alone. I want us to come together as a group, mobilize, have one voice, so that we could, be empowered and sit at the table with the government and with other stakeholders, so that we could improve our lives as people living with mental disorder. Well, enough of that now. Let me get back to the real reason why I'm making the video. The real reason why I'm making the video is to share my life with others out there, people who I know are suffering, people who I know have been, pushed into a corner, and they feel like that's the end of it, there's nothing else to life except suffer and probably, end up with taking your life. But it doesn't have to be that way. My story begins in 1995. I still remember it clearly. I was just 3 years out of high school, and I was doing farming, horticultural farming as my hustle back then. And so when I came down with the illness, I thought that probably I'd inhaled some of the strong chemicals I was using to grow tomatoes. So I went to the hospital, the CIA County Referral Hospital, as it is known now, but back then it was called District Hospital. So I did the lab work there, and after the lab work they gave me medicine, and I went back home. And I took the medicines, but there was no improvement. I was kind of hallucinating, and I was also delusional, but I wasn't hearing any voices at all. So when I came back home, my dad had gotten a promotion in Nairobi, so he enrolled me in a college there, and I started doing my production engineering in Railway Training Institute. That was in 1995. And actually, even after going to Nairobi, the illness had not receded, so I became, really psychotic, and ended up in Bagathi Hospital, where they diagnosed me with cerebral malaria. It was pretty serious. So after that diagnosis, they gave me meds, and it kind of just normalized, and I just ignored it and went on with my life. But then fast forward to 2002, I was now working with Youth with a Mission as a missionary, and I got a very good opportunity to go and study Bible in the United States, in Madison, Wisconsin. So while I was halfway through that school, I became psychotic. And when I became psychotic, I completely lost it. And all I wanted to do was to come back to Kenya. I just felt I did not want to be in the US at that time. So on my way back to Kenya, I completely lost it in the airport and ended up in Chicago Reed Mental Health Hospital. And I was there for a few days, and they diagnosed me with brief psychotic disorder. So I refused even to take meds while there. I refused to take medicine. I was just into my spiritual stuff, my religion, my stuff, my suspicions, and so I thought that after something, I wasn't ill at all, and they just wanted to give me medicine. So I refused taking the medicine. So when I came back to Kenya, I normalized and went back to missions. I was working with the then national director of Youth with a Mission called Joel Maregwa, a very good friend of mine. And well, I got another opportunity to come back to the United States and do a school of worship and evangelism in Chico, California. So when I started doing that school, I became psychotic as well during that school. And when I became psychotic during that school, I went to San Francisco. And in San Francisco, I started struggling. You know, I was still early. Remember, during this whole period of time, I'd never been diagnosed with exact illness, and I'd not been on meds. So it's just like normalizing without medicine, and then getting into episodes again. So when I became psychotic in San Francisco, it was so serious that I left San Francisco to go as far away from San Francisco as I could, because I was so terrified of that city. And I ended up in Sacramento. And in Sacramento, I arrived there in the evening, spent the night at Greyhound bus station, and the following day I started walking, not knowing where I was going, not knowing anyone, and in the United States, and just walking the highways and just directionless. And I ended up walking for 16 hours. I was so thirsty, I was so delusional, I was literally living in hell. So I spent the night under a tree that evening, and it was warm, it wasn't cold, thank God. And so when it got to the morning, I started wandering around again, ended up in a woman's home. I remember she was sleeping in the couch with her daughter, and they were like in deep shock when they saw me. So I knew I wasn't welcome there. So I kind of just went outside, and they called the sheriff. And the sheriff came and took me to the mental hospital in Sacramento. So I was there for a few days. I agreed to take meds. So I took meds, normalized, and went back to San Francisco. And I got put into the care of a clinic. And so that's a clinic where they did a lot of work in me. I was diagnosed, but they never told me the diagnosis then, but they put me on meds. I normalized so well that I went back to college, and I started doing accounting. I was majoring in accounting at City College of San Francisco. And in City College of San Francisco, it went well for all those years, because I joined in 2005. By 2008, when I was finishing, I was supposed to transfer to San Francisco State University and do information systems, but I became psychotic at that point, just when I was just finishing. And this time around, it was so heavy, I started hearing voices. And I knew that I could not make it in the States. So I talked with my family, and I made the decision to come back to Kenya. So I got back to Kenya. They just told me the diagnosis when I was leaving. They told me I was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but I literally denied it. I just thought I was someone was probably suffering from mild depression or depression, just because I was living in the States and stuff like that. I was away from family and friends. So I denied it completely, came back and never told anyone, just isolated myself, just started becoming really weird according to my friends. And I was living in hell, and I was really desperate. So I just kept to myself and started working online. I got gigs online that I did. I worked with Facebook, I worked with Google, I worked with Data Miner, I worked with another company called Listeria, and a few other companies that I was working with in Facebook. No, in online in a company called Odesk that later became known as Upwork. So in 2015, my brother died, and when he died, it shocked me a big deal, and I relapsed. So when I relapsed, I lost it completely. Started believing that because this whole time I was still into missionary work. Though I tried it with Wawa when I returned from the United States, but I was not myself, and they released me. So after that, I started my own missionary work called Oasis of Mercy. And Oasis of Mercy was not registered by the government, but it's just an outfit that I formed. It was pretty much online, and I had even a blog online that I was running the ministry with. And so the funds that I was getting from my gig on online work, I was using to minister. And I didn't have direction of which way I was gonna go, even with the missionary work that I was doing. So it was pretty much prayer. Most of the time I was praying to get clarification and know the direction which I was going. So when I became delusional in 2015 after my brother's death, I felt that there was some missionary that was to meet in South Africa, that I was going to launch Oasis of Mercy in South Africa, that these people are going to meet with me there, just the way the illness is. So I had 20,000 shillings. I jumped on a bus and went, believing that I was going to South Africa. But I ended up in Tanzania. And in Tanzania, I ended up making some bad decisions, and eventually ended up in jail in Tanzania. So while in jail in Tanzania, and what landed me in jail is because I went to the Russian embassy and started, acting up. Because back in the States, in City College of San Francisco, I was recruited by U.S. Army. And so I thought that probably the U.S. government was after me, so, that crazy stuff. So that's what landed me in Russian embassy, thinking that they could grant me an asylum to go to Russia and be protected from the U.S. government. So while in jail, I was lucky to meet a prison officer who agreed me to use his phone to call my mother. And I called her, and she helped organize for me to get out of jail in Tanzania. So I came back to Kenya, and from that point on, I knew I had to start being serious and quit living in denial. So I left living in denial. But the treatment, the family decided to treat me, and this they decided to do in secret. So they would put medicine in my food, and I would eat it. But I recovered, yes, but with a lot of side effects, and I was deeply depressed. And actually, I started having thoughts of suicide. And while in that state of suicidal thinking and stuff like that, I said, well, I think I've reached my end now, and I'm probably just gonna, end my life. But I told myself, in this state, let me also look for help. Maybe there's help somewhere. Some help that can help me turn my life around. So I started looking for help, but unfortunately there was none in the area I was living in, and by extension the whole country. There was nothing really to help me. So I went online again and looked even internationally, and I was lucky to meet a very understanding lady, and someone that I deeply respect, called Deborah Connor. She was the then British Columbia Schizophrenic Society executive director, and she brought me under her wings and started guiding me, and told me about organizing as a family, organizing as friends, organizing as users and stuff like that. And so she's the one who brought me up to speed Matters organization of people living with mental illness. So we organized and eventually got registered in 2019, and that's been the journey actually. And what's helped me as a person is therapy. I've done a lot of spiritual therapy, and after listening to a speech from a webinar by a doctor in McLean Hospital in the USA, he emphasized that spirituality aids mental illness, and it's something that's evidence-based, something they've experienced in the hospital, and something they worked on. So when I got that information, and being a missionary, I started doing spiritual therapy, and that's what's helped me, that's what's kept me functional, and that's what's keeping me going. And I could tell you for a fact that I'm not the same person again that I was those years back when I was living in hell and like wanting to take my life and stuff like that. So I just want to finish by saying that this illness is not a death sentence. It's not the end of the road, and you should not feel like it's the end of the road for you. You should not feel like it's the end, and the only thing you can do now is take your life. No. If life gives you lemons, learn to make lemonade and have a party.